Hello, successful people. Welcome back to the Iron Fry Success Channel. I'm DK.
And I'm Mo.
Thank you so much to our subscribers.
And if you're new to our channel, welcome. Is it a good time to build a house in Texas?
I'm going to share some considerations, tips, and resources to help you figure that out. On this channel, we focused on our new construction home building experience when building our custom home in Texas, and we also share information about the home building process in general with the hopes that it might help other people learn some of the lessons we learned along the way. We think this is a good time to present this video that takes us to the very beginning and answers the question that might be on your mind of, is it really a good time to build a home in Texas? Now, this is a question that, regardless of what's going on, is something that everyone who's considering building a home is always asking. But I think now more than ever, it might be more challenging to figure out how to answer that question. So I'm going to share some considerations or things that you should think about to help you answer that question for you and your family, share with you some tips and some resources you can follow so that way you can keep adding to your knowledge base and help figure that out. The considerations are money, time, and the market. And you'll see how these three things are actually intertwined that make answering this question a lot more challenging. When it comes to time, there are multiple things about time that you're going to need to know, think about, and make some decisions about that are going to significantly impact your decision on whether to build a house in Texas or not in 2025. Do I really need to make a decision now at all? When Mo and I built our house, we started off, we didn't even live in a state of Texas. We decided it was best to move here first, rent a house, and that way we wanted to be here while our house was being built. We didn't necessarily have a timeline hanging over our head in terms of you had to get the house built during a certain time, but we decided to do that in stages so that we would be able to take our time, find a builder, and decide if the time is right. However, for you or your family, you may have some time constraints. You may have a new job, say that you have to move. Maybe you're in the process of relocating anyway. Maybe you're living with friends or relatives and the time has come. Or maybe you have a lease somewhere that is going to be up and you're wondering, should I renew? All of these factors about time are going to help you determine, is it a type of situation where you have to make a decision or not? The second is, if not, how long could you wait? How long could you watch the other factors we're going to get into to see if they help you make a move that the timing is right now, or maybe you should wait? How long will it take to build the house? Now, this is something that is going to be a place where money and the market are actually going to overlap. And here's why. Normally, when you walk into a builder's office, you're going to be asking the builder, how long does it take to build from the time that you contract to the time the house is done? When market forces are reliable, or I guess I can say stable, you can usually take whatever the builder's answer is to be a reliable indicator of the actual amount of time. So if a builder says it takes 9 months to 12 months or 12 months to 18, that under normal market conditions is a reliable response. As we know, there are things that happen that interfere with that, even if the builder's answer is trustworthy up front, such as COVID-19 pandemic, such as supply chain issues that will make certain building materials scarce and drive up the price, such as the current immigration crackdown that might actually create a labor shortage, which means maybe the house will take longer to get built than originally planned. And there's also the builder's project priorities, because there could be market conditions or conditions happening which make the builder change what used to be a priority of getting a particular neighborhood or development done, which might actually lead to your house taking longer if the builder's priorities shift and they need to direct resources elsewhere. So I can share with you real quick what happened to us is that between the time that we contracted for our house and the time that our house actually got built, the cost of lumber shot up. Supply chain issues, war broke out in Ukraine, and things like that. So now it wasn't just the COVID-19 pandemic, but we had these other things that happened that made the cost of lumber, the cost of materials, everything shot up, and so did interest rates. So the situation we wound up with at the time our house was finished meant the interest rates were higher. We paid more for the house than we would have, a few years earlier. And so that's just to let you know that it's always the case that you can start contracting because of the fact that on average it takes about a year to build. A lot of things could happen in a year to make the timing different, the financial situation different, and the outlook about what you are planning to do by moving into that house in a certain time frame different. Why is that significant? And here's where the money consideration is intertwined with the time. If you are building a custom home like we did, the significance of the money and time relationship is that during the time that your house is being built, you are going to make progress payments to the builder. There's a schedule that the bank has about when is the expected completion date of the house. And during the time along that schedule, as the builder is withdrawing more money because they are reaching milestones in completion of your house, you are making payments to the bank to make interest payments based on the total amount of money borrowed. There are videos that we've made that explain the financial terms, that explain the financial procedures used when building a house, and I'll drop a link in the description box to those videos if you're interested and want to know more. But just know there is a relationship between how long things take to progress in the build and how much money we had to pay. So when it gets to the 12-month mark, which is what our builder told us and the bank was the time it would take for the house to get built, and the house was not done, the bank is still going to hold us responsible for making those payments and our money, except there are penalties now that are added on top because of the continuation of time. So time is money is applicable if you're building a custom home and you're having to make these payments. Now, what if you're building a semi-custom home where you don't have to make payments to the bank during the time that the house is built, but the builder promises to build your house in 12 months, and usually they don't exactly promise, right? And what happens to you when your house is not ready during that time? You have to actually think about this when you're contracting because you need to know what in your contract gives you some kind of recourse. Is it that it just takes as long as it takes and you're still obligated to pay for that house at the end of that? Is there a clause where if it takes a certain amount of time too long, you're able to get out of it? Or is there a clause that if it takes so long, maybe the original terms of your contract aren't even the same? I'm just throwing these out here so that you realize that there are relationships between time and money when building a custom or semi-custom home that you need to be aware of before you enter into that contract. So this way, if something happens and it takes longer than expected, you know what rights you have and what obligations you have as well. Now let's add the market forces in here. We did that a little bit earlier when I was talking about the price of lumber and COVID and immigration and the supply chain issues. But now let's kind of wrap all these up into a ball and see why the market considerations are going to exert forces upon the time of your build, the time it takes to get your house built, as well as how much that house costs. I don't know if you guys remember that there was a time, I want to say it might have been before COVID, where there were people who had contracted for semi-custom homes, which is you put money down, you pick out all the stuff, and the builder builds the house. And at the end of that, now you come in with a mortgage and take the house that you pretty much worked on building for a year. But what if the market shifts during that time, which it did, which meant that now the demand for that already done house went up? So now what you contracted for, let's say $500,000 house on January 1st, when the house is built on December 1st, the market says the builder can charge $700,000 for that house. So then the builder comes back to you and says, listen, I know we made an agreement for one amount of money, but now the house is worth way more. So if you want this house, you're going to have to pay me $700,000 or else, oh, well, you're out of a house. It did happen to a lot of people. So market forces could impact your decision in a market where certain factors are volatile. Do you want to take the chance of that happening? Or is that something that is reasonable to occur during the time that it takes to get your house built? Interest rates. I talked about that, how that happened to us, that during the time that our house was built, interest rates used to be really low, and then in a couple of years, they shot up. Think about that and think about how much of a factor it is or isn't. What we learned was that even though interest rates got, increased during the time we were building, they've steadily stayed generally in the same area with a slight dip last summer where for a couple of months rates were falling, but now they're back up. So that means that it wouldn't have been that much of a factor in whether or not we waited or built our house when we did, because we would have been in the same boat if we even waited till now. And also know that you can refinance a house, obviously, later, so that if interest rates are high, maybe they have nowhere to go but down. So interest rates may or may not be that much of a factor in your decision, but it still means it's a factor for you to think about. The other thing is the cost of materials. Now, this is something where at the time that we built, like I said, lumber had went sky high. Think about, is there anything happening in the market now that makes it volatile so that it could be that the cost of materials is higher? So maybe the amount of money you're paying for your house might actually be elevated because of scarcity of materials, or tariffs for that matter. If tariffs affect the lumber industry, and if Texas gets lumber from Canada or whatever, is that going to mean that if you try to build a house automatically, that house might cost more money? Something for you to think about. Also, an issue that is kind of related to the market might be quality. So if there are issues where there's an immigration crackdown and now that results in a labor shortage because the immigration is tied to the housing industry. I'm not a housing expert, I'm not an analyst, but I have two eyes and I could see if I go outside, does it look like there are construction sites that used to have people 30 days ago and today nobody's there, which means nothing is getting built, at least at that particular site that I pass by. So what do I think that means? Do I think it means that maybe my house might cost more? Do I think it means my house might take longer to get built? Do I think that I need to be worried about the quality now and the integrity of what product I'm getting if a builder is still able to produce a house in 9 or 10 months, but I visibly don't see a squad of people working on it? That's just for you to watch and think through. Is it something that you think is going to be a factor that is going to impact your house build should you choose to build now? Here are some tips that I think you should take to help you get information that you can rely on about the time, money, and market overlap that you could use and somewhat trust. I say somewhat because it is going to be very difficult to know what it is you should pay attention to and what information is reliable. So my number one tip would be hire a realtor, because a realtor may not care if you are building a new home versus buying a new home. But at least that is an individual who is less likely to be providing information to you as the client That's just to suck you into doing a transaction that falls apart later because they too have an interest in getting paid. 2, consider a spec home. This is tip number 2, because if you want a new construction home, but you don't want to assume a lot of risk of having the time, money, and market factors make it, maybe not a good idea for you to start from the beginning. There are many builders that have already built homes called spec homes where you didn't get a chance to pick out what's in it. You didn't get a chance to pick out the floor plan, but the houses are brand new and they're already done, which means you could just come in, still live in a brand new house, and you didn't have to assume a lot of the risk of the time, money, and the market making it take longer or drive up the price, because the price is what it is. And there are some spec homes that might be at a certain phase of being done, but not completely done, where maybe you still have the ability to come in and make some choices and decisions that impact the decor, or maybe even at an earlier stage to impact the structural integrity of the home, meaning adding bedrooms and things like that, that if you're early in the process, you could do. But obviously, if you come in after that's already been decided, you can't. Number 3, tip is pay attention to trends in the housing market yourself. Go online, talk to your realtor, and try to find out what are those reputable sources of information where you too can educate yourself about what these market forces are, so that this way you can make an informed decision about whether it's a good time to get started on your new home or not. And that's where it comes to the resources part of this video. I'm going to put in the description box some of the resources we found that we relied upon that seem to have more unbiased information about the housing industry, so that we too could verify what's being told to us and follow it, so that we can make a decision that's best for us. You want to make sure that you look at sources that will tell you what the price of lumber is, that track the price of lumber. The National Association of Home Builders is a good source of information, just generally speaking, that tracks a lot of these indicators, and that is information that is kept up to date. There's a Texas Association of Home Builders as well that has more Texas-specific information. I was trying to figure out if there were newspapers or news outlets that would be able to run stories about the market. I came across the Texas Tribune. I don't really know a lot about that paper, so I couldn't tell you whether or not there is some kind of, target audience that the paper is geared towards. I'm just letting you know that that's what I found, and that they did have articles and information about market forces on the Texas building industry in general. There's Mortgage News Daily that tracks the ups and downs of the mortgage market. There's the Wall Street Journal, and I'm going to put some links to these things in the description box. One more tip, and I think I've said this before, but just in case, do not just take the builder representative's word for how long it is going to take. Do not take their word for it. Don't worry, if something goes sideways, you'll get your deposit back. Please read. Please use a realtor, and please make informed decisions that are good for you and your family. I am very happy that we decided to build when we did. Although it was a volatile time in the market, it doesn't seem like waiting any longer would have changed that situation for us. So as it turned out to be a good decision to build when we did. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got some information here that'll help you decide whether or not it's a good time for you to build a house in Texas.
Please subscribe for more content about new home construction and model home tours in and around San Antonio.
And continue to follow us as we continue to turn our new construction house into a home.
As always, until next time, be peaceful, stay prayerful, and count your blessings.